It's your girl Gloria, and you are tuned into Good Vibes and Deep Dives, where we connect and reflect every week. Before we get started with today's show, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that this is episode number 1, which marks the start of something new and exciting, a show that's been a long time in the making. So you can expect to hear everything from lighthearted and silly conversations about random topics to very deep ones. I'm here for it all. It's a space for us to navigate life by talking things through. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode. We're starting off with a mindset refresh. And as you know, it's a brand new year. Happy 2026. I'm excited about it. And to me, it only makes sense to move forward by taking a step back and reflecting. But instead of sharing a 2025 recap the traditional way, I want to share 3 rules I set for myself based on last year's lessons learned and my latest read, 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals by Oliver Burkeman. These rules are what I like to call quit, sit, and commit, which are all things I need to do to help me accomplish my goals and avoid the burnout we typically experience. So let's start with rule number 1, quit. This is about quitting or getting rid of the fantasy we have about being able to get everything done. We like to think that once we clear our to-do list, then we'll be able to focus on everything else we want to do. We tell ourselves that we have to be as productive as possible and that if we manage our time better, we'll be able to relax sooner. But that's a lie. And Oliver Burkeman argues that productivity is a trap because the more efficient we become, it doesn't give us the free time we expect it to. All it does is speed up everything we want to do, and we end up finding more things to do. And that's essentially the efficiency trap. The more productive you become means that you'll just continue to be on this loop of being busy and being quote unquote productive. And I can say this is something that I've experienced in both my personal life and work life. I've gotten to the point where my to-do lists have to-do lists. And I see that the more I get into these zones of trying to get everything done, I just end up doing a whole bunch of busy work and not really making the progress that I want to see. And that's something that really set in, I want to say, October of last year. I was like, wow, I've been working so hard, but I'm not really seeing the progress I want to see. And that was because a lot of my time was filled with a lot of busy work for a lot of different things versus just focusing on a few things and tackling those tasks, right? And even though I was checking these things off, I still didn't feel good about being busy and productive. I was more so concerned about the things I didn't get to. So what's the fix to this? I think we need to practice what Burkeman calls strategic underachievement. And that means choosing different areas in your life where you just won't set that excellent expectation for yourself. It sounds weird, it sounds counterintuitive, but when you decide in advance what you're basically going to fail at, then you remove any guilt or shame you feel for not accomplishing everything you set out to, because you're restructuring the way that you approach getting things done. You may have a list of 10 things to do, but you really only focus in on your top 3. They might all be important, but you're just being realistic about what you can get done in the time that you have. And by doing this, you don't feel any type of way about the 7 other things you didn't get to. They're just simply things that you didn't get to yet. By quitting this concept or letting go of this idea that we're going to be able to get all of these things done in this limited amount of time, what I would call the impossible goals, we're going to be able to actually succeed at the things that we really want to achieve. So that's going to be the first hard truth we're going to carry with us into this new year. You have to quit the impossible goal to be able to succeed at the realistic one. And once you stop running around trying to clear your to-do list, you're not going to be distracted by all of the chaos anymore. You're going to be able to look at your to-do list and say, okay, I only have this amount of time. What can I really do with it? And it's uncomfortable. It's a hard truth to accept that we don't have all the time in the world and we're only given a certain amount of time to be able to accomplish things. And all of those things take the time that they take. So, with that in mind, I know the feeling is icky, and this discomfort is going to bring us into rule number 2. And that rule is to sit. And this is about embracing patience and learning to sit through the things that take time. Now, we typically rush through everything because we're just focused on getting to the end of the journey as quick as possible. We think if we hurry, if we make it through, then we'll finally be able to be happy because we're getting to the payoff of whatever effort we put in. But realistically speaking, if you're always hurrying through things, all you're going to do is feel like you have to speed through everything. And that makes me think about different moments in my life where I wasn't really patient and I did worse because I just didn't want to sit there and let things take the time that they take. And when I'm thinking about 2025, there's this one moment that sticks out to me. And it was so simple, but so powerful because I was like, wow, I am the problem. So there was this one day where I was heading into work early for an event. During this time, I was super busy and I was just on this mission of getting things done and trying to get through everything as fast as I could. So I'm on my way to work. I'm about 5 minutes away, and there's a crash at the intersection that I turn on. So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, like, dang, I hope everyone's okay. But then that thought was quickly followed by, okay, how long is this going to take? Because I have things to do. And not the nicest follow up, but realistic. And so I'm sitting there and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to pass the street that I typically turn on and I'm just going to make a U-turn and that should be quicker. I've just felt so uncomfortable sitting there and waiting and watching, the police try to coordinate traffic and move the cars. I just felt like my time was going to be better used making this U-turn and I'll be able to just make a right turn onto the street I need to go on. So the math made sense in my head, right? But when I did that, it actually took me a lot longer to get to work. I added more driving time, even though my main concern was trying to get there early. And so, again, just a reminder to be patient, even if sitting there is uncomfortable. It's what Burkeman refers to as learning to stay on the bus, which means we need to accept that things are just going to take the time that they take. And so we need to just stay the course. He also mentions that patience is a way of psychologically accommodating yourself to a lack of power, which in the grand scheme of things, it's true, right? He makes another comment about reading and how a lot of people say that they don't have the time to read. But in reality, it's not that they don't have the time, they just don't have the patience to get through the content in a book and wait enough until it gets good so they feel like it's worth their time. And so thinking about it that way makes you realize I'm trying to rush things that I really have no control over. And by getting stressed out and trying to rush the impossible, I'm just creating more work for myself. So I'm much better off just taking a moment and accepting the reality that I can't speed it up. So I just need to let it do what it needs to do and keep going forward with my plan. Even if it's yucky, even if I'm sitting there twiddling my thumbs, I just need to let the things take the time they need to take because ultimately I can't control how long it's going to take regardless. I appreciate that he uses the bus example, staying on the bus, because I think it really explains how often on our journeys to achieving anything, we have multiple moments where we can get off that path. On a bus, you have multiple stops and you can get off on any one, even if your intention was to be on the longest route. So staying on the bus is about staying on the path and just seeing things all the way through, regardless of how you may feel about the journey. And we're not going to see our results unless we stay on this bus. So in 2025, I think about how often I rush to get through things, and I'm sure you did too. So in 2026, I want us to just sit through our experiences, even if they feel unfinished. I want us to take a different approach and not try to bum rush through, the different problems that are presented in life, but just really giving things the attention it deserves and being patient enough to let it happen the way it's supposed to. And as I'm saying this, I don't want you to think that you need to just do nothing and let time pass. It's not about that. What it's about is still getting things done, still actively working towards things, but not doing it in a way that's rushed and forced. Approach everything with a sense of calmness, be patient, and put into work. Everything else will figure itself out. So just be patient and sit. I know it sounds good, and you're probably wondering how you're going to be able to do that when you have all of these different things that you want to do. You probably feel a little anxious and overwhelmed, and that's okay because this is going to take us into our next rule, and that is rule number 3, commit. So this is all about committing to the best decision you can make in a present moment and not worrying about what's going to happen in the future with this decision. Because I think oftentimes we hold ourselves back because our effort isn't necessarily guaranteed. So we're so pressed about making the best decision that we can for this future payoff or what our legacy is going to look like. So we become so consumed with the future that in the present, we can't really focus. And I'll be honest, it's pretty hard to get out of that mindset because I think a lot of the ways that we are raised have to do with this concept of working towards a future, right? Putting things in motion because you want to see the seedlings that you plant sprout. And so we're always thinking about what we're doing now in the sense of what it's going to mean to us in the future, whether that's next week, next month, next year, or 10 years from now. We're constantly thinking about everything we do in terms of the future. And I think we need to take a step back, reframe how we think about our time. And one of the best ways to think about the future is to think about it the way Burkeman does. And he introduces this concept called cosmic insignificance therapy, which basically tells us that we should find comfort in the fact that the universe could care less about what we want to do with our lives. And you know what? I think that's a great thing. We can't control the future, so we should stop obsessing over it. We should stop thinking about all of these future plans because we're not going to be able to control how they actually pan out. This doesn't mean stop planning, but what it means is stop worrying about the plans you make. Just make the plan and move forward with it. And as you're moving forward, stay focused on the present. When we put our efforts into the present moment and making sure that we're making the decisions that are going to add value to us, and when we can identify what's going to add value, figuring out what's the next best thing that we can do to add the most value, that thought process is going to help carry us into a better future than worrying about the future and allowing those feelings to cloud the way we approach the task that we have now. Because the other part of that too is the future might change. What we want might change. The tools and resources we have available to us might change. So trying to worry about things that aren't set in stone yet do more of a disservice to us than they'll ever help. So it's all about focusing on the little things we do every day and making sure that those decisions that we're making in the moment are the best decisions that we can make. And we have to trust that that's going to pave the way for a better future. So again, this whole idea that we're really insignificant is the key to us accepting that we have more freedom than we think. We can just move forward and work and put things out and not concern ourselves with what's going to come of it or what people are going to think of us, because in the grand scheme of things, it probably won't matter, and that's okay. There's another piece in the text where Burkeman talks about originality and how it lies on the far side of unoriginality, which means that you have to commit to doing the boring early work for you to eventually get to the good stuff. And this is another reference to that concept of staying on the bus. A lot of times, the things that we set out to do tend to be pretty long journeys, and it's monotonous, right? It feels like we're not doing anything special and we're just doing these mediocre tasks for a very long time. But if we can figure out how to keep going and not let that discourage us, we'll find that at the end, all of this ordinary work that we were doing is going to turn into something extraordinary. Some of these concepts that I discussed earlier remind me of this book that I read a few years ago called Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon. And he talks about something similar where he basically tells you that the world isn't worried about you, and most of the things that we're going to do are going to be forgotten about anyway. So that should give you the freedom to create without feeling guilty or ashamed about what you're doing. And when I think about last year, I think about how much of my time I spent procrastinating because I was a perfectionist. I wanted things to come out a certain way, and I was mindful of how I might be received. So when I think about implementing the concepts, it reminds me that I don't have to worry about things being perfect. I shouldn't care about how they're going to be received. If it's something that I really want to do, I should just move forward and do it, right? And I can do that by just worrying about what's right in front of me, because I'm never going to be able to control what the outcome is when I produce whatever I produce. So we don't really need this perfect plan. We just need to commit to something and then decide what's the next best thing we can do to make it happen. And if we can stick to that, 2026 isn't going to be just another busy year. It's going to be a year where we do meaningful things. So those are the rules that I'm carrying into 2026: quitting the fantasy of doing it all, sitting with the reality of time, and committing to the next best thing. And I know, even with this mindset and a solid plan, this new year energy feels like a lot. So you might be looking at your list of goals and feeling pressure. You want to do everything perfectly. And I'm here to help you, help me, help us. So I want to make sure we can figure out how to move through these feelings and not be overwhelmed. So let's get into this week's advice. For the next few days, I want to lean into rule number 1, quit. So my advice is to practice strategic underachievement. Anytime you start looking at your to-do list and you feel stressed about it, take a moment, breathe, remind yourself that you're not going to be able to do it all, and that's okay, because trying to do everything is going to be impossible, and that's what's going to lead us to a burnout, and we don't want that. So we're going to practice quitting. We're going to pick one area of our life to be bad at this week and do it on purpose. So, for example, maybe the laundry piles up because I need to get a workout in, or I take longer to answer texts, give people a call back because I need to focus on getting things done at home or closing up some work tasks. Whatever it is, just give yourself permission to let those things drop off your list so that you can focus on the bigger priorities. And to help us stick to that, I also have an affirmation for us, and that's going to be, I choose what matters and I quit the rest. Repeat it to yourself when that guilt creeps in. Remember, we're not falling behind. We're just choosing where we want to show up and shine. So that's going to be it for today's show. I hope that these rules help you feel a little bit more prepared for whatever the new year has in store. And if you want to go deeper into these concepts, especially the freedom of cosmic insignificance therapy, I highly recommend grabbing a copy of 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals by Oliver Burkeman. It was a great read and really helped me change the way that I approach getting things done. It's also written in a way that's very matter of fact, and I love a direct author, so definitely recommend. And if you enjoyed tonight's episode, make sure you follow us, you share the vibes with a friend, and for more, you can find us at goodvibesdeepdives.com. Don't forget to tune in to next week's episode so we can follow up on the advice and see how everything went. So until next time, bye.